You know, it's really humbling to be asked to speak at an event like this, and especially it's so important and so amazing to hear stories like we just heard from Antonio, and to be in a room full of people who help to facilitate these types of stories and this support really means a lot. So anyway, I really appreciate being here. I appreciate you. And I'm the type of person that is kind of really impatient, if you know me. I just want things done right now. So it was great to hear to listen to Amy speak and hear about the things that are happening, and to know things are moving forward. Even if I want everything perfect right this minute, we are moving forward, and I do appreciate that. So, 100 days ago today, I started being the mayor of Provo, and it's been a really great experience. One of the things that I'm sure that you all love, that I love, is being able to help people one-on-one. And I have been, as you know, during this 100 days and before that, I get emails and visits from people who are trying to navigate this system and who are having a really hard time trying to find housing, trying to deal with rents that are constantly going up, trying to find help for their mentally ill child, or just things like that. And it is really hard to not have immediate help for them. But either way, it is really, it's just an honor to be able to be in a position where we can work on these kinds of things, right? And really sometimes be able to help in a really positive way. So I haven't had a lot of free time lately, but I do love to read, and I have been able to read a couple of books. I want to tell you about one. Have any of you read the book Kindred by Octavia Butler? I see a hand. Okay, it's a really good book. It was written in the 1970s, the late 1970s. It was this groundbreaking book. I read it probably 30 years ago, loved it, read it again for a book group, and was able to re-examine, probably in a little different headspace, the book, but I loved it both times. And the writer, sorry, I go into too much detail, and I'm so sorry, my kids, luckily none of them are here, so they can't criticize later. But anyway, the writer was groundbreaking. It was this young African-American woman who wrote science fiction, which is still rare even today. But what this book was about, it kind of is different than her other books. It's about this young black woman who is living in LA in 1976, and she gets thrust back into time to antebellum South on a plantation in Maryland. And this woman, Dana, is very educated, and she's confident. She's a writer, very sure of herself. And she looks around at the slaves, and she thinks, why aren't they escaping? Why aren't they doing something about this situation? Why aren't they fighting back? And she soon learns that there are so many barriers in place to that she, as this capable modern woman, as modern as women were in the 1970s, I was in the 1970s, so I can say that, still cannot do anything much about her situation, and she learns how, she says, it was so surprising how easy it was to become a slave. The reason I'm telling you this story is because I have found that same attitude in myself sometimes, and I've seen it in other people, that we might look at someone else's situation and say, why aren't they doing this, right? Why haven't they lifted themselves out of this situation? Why can't they get a job? If I was in that situation, this is how I would respond to this. And policymakers often rely on our own experiences to inform our decision making. And what this book points out is that we need to slow down a minute. We need to realize that not everybody has the same life experiences as us. There are people coming at situations from generations of trauma or intergenerational poverty or just situations that we might not understand fully and that we just have to be really careful. And it really does require a deeper understanding of what is truly needed for each individual to succeed and what people need to do to build a life where they can flourish. And this is a long-term investment and one that you in this room are making for people and for yourself. So, before I became mayor, I was an adjunct professor at UVU. I taught math there. And because of my own life experiences, I set up my classroom a little differently than some of my peers. And the reason why is because I was informed by my own children, by my own life experience. I have children who are neurodiverse and had a lot of difficulties in the classroom. And so I found that if you set up a classroom in a way where those who are maybe most impacted by things, that maybe have a shorter attention span or have difficulties, if you set up a classroom in a way that they can succeed and learn, guess what? Everybody in that class can succeed and learn. And the same is true of our society and our policy-making landscape. If we set up life to support and lift those individuals that maybe are the most vulnerable or having the hardest time, everybody in society is lifted and supported. And we can all function in a society that's like that. So, we often do not live up to our stated priorities, right? Instead of maybe investing in evidence-based programs like circles, we invest in criminal justice or roads. And we don't necessarily invest in ways to fill that gap and to support. One analogy is we pay for the ambulance in the valley instead of paying for the bridge, and I might be mixing this one up, but the bridge at the top, right, so people can cross safely. So why is this? And I'm not sure, but it does seem to be that we go back to this basing our policy making, basing our having the bias or whatever that we, because we are basing things on our own life experience and maybe not understanding where other people are coming from. And it has taken me some difficult circumstances in my own life to come to the realization that many of the assumptions that I make are not necessarily the whole story. And as I have met and gotten to know and listened and loved people who have come to me with many different backgrounds and many different stories, it reminds me to set aside that bias as I meet new people and to believe, I think that's really important, to believe the stories of others. So I had the great opportunity when I was in the legislature, this was one of my first years, I saw some individuals who were homeless who had come inside the Capitol to get warm. And so I brought them into my office and asked them to tell me their stories. And they did. Stories, like I said, are so important. And it was enlightening and sad and frustrating and to realize how the barriers that were put in place for them were just so hard to overcome. One gentleman had been beat up in the homeless shelter and all of his identification was taken. So then now he was trying to go through the process of trying to get identification, which is really hard when you're homeless and you don't have an address and you don't have transportation and you don't have records of who you are, and then you can't get a job, and then you can't, you know what I mean? It just is this constant thing. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but there were, out of these 6, 4 of them had been wards of the state and had been DCFS custody as kids, and they were just kind of set loose, when they're 18 and don't have family support. And how do we expect them to navigate without social structures in place that can help them, right? So I do believe that when we are proximate to people and when we listen to stories like we are hearing here, it will change things. It changes hearts. I've seen it. I've seen legislators, policymakers, and myself. I've seen our hearts change, and I think that is what we need. So, truth is, we can never truly understand what someone else is going through, but we can listen and we can believe. So, I want to talk about one of the populations that I'm kind of concerned about here in Provo, and that is our student population. They make up roughly about 1/3 of the population in Provo. And recent changes to Medicaid and SNAP, with stricter income limits and expanded work requirements, which always sounds so good on paper, mean that many of them will likely lose access to food assistance and to health care. So this is just really concerning, especially when I have to consider how in Provo we have such a shortage of affordable housing for them also. So, according to the Institute for College Access and Success, 1 in 5 college students experiences food insecurity, and it is higher here in Provo. So at UVU alone, where I taught, the campus food pantry distributed more than 52,000 pounds of food in 2024. And that service did fill the gap of some of the students, having to choose whether they were going to pay rent or buy food. And being enrolled or staying afloat, right? And this system, which is meant to help them, can be so difficult to navigate, as many of you in this room know, as you try to help others or have tried to navigate the system yourself. And so even under the current system, SNAP eligibility rules for students are extremely complex and inconsistent. Students enrolled less than half-time have to meet these strict work requirements, but attending college does not count toward those hours. And students that are enrolled at least half-time are exempt from work requirements, but they also don't qualify for benefits unless they meet some really narrow criteria. And, we heard a little bit about the benefits cliff. I'm very happy to hear that Utah is working towards making that less steep, I hope, or taking it away altogether. But when we set up programs like this that are meant to support and help, but we put in so many barriers and criteria that it just causes more stress and difficulties for this student population. But I'm speaking specifically, it limits their educational opportunities. Many of them have to drop out. I saw this in my own classrooms, where they're trying to make the choice, do I work full-time? Do I go to school? What do I do? So they end up dropping out, and then that limits their choices for the future. So how do we change this? You being here and being an allied group together really does make a difference, and it does matter. But we are only going to be successful if we elect people. Sorry, I always have to throw this out there. If we elect people who will be allies in this work. And right now is a perfect time to go out and find more allies. There are a lot of groups that don't even know that they want to be allied in this, right? Law enforcement, extremely important to law enforcement that Medicaid is available for the people that they work with and serve. Anyway, I just think we need to go out and find more allies. I know that up at the Capitol we had so many strong voices in the social services area, but we need more than that. Like honestly, we need more than that. Whenever we can, we need to flood our legislators with our voices. And honestly, it's really interesting, and that's on every single level. I've talked a little bit about the legislative level. I won't go more into that. I could complain all day, and I don't want to. So, I will talk about how even on a local level, I just found out, I think this is crazy, and I know Skylar mentioned to me, why does Provo have so many crazy housing codes that make it so difficult, right, to just build a house? We do. And if I could change code, I would do it. Up to my city council, right? So go talk to my city council. But a lot of times we don't even know what codes are there that are causing these barriers, right? I found out that in Provo, you're required to have 2 covered housing or 2 covered parking spaces for every, like if you are building a home. And I asked our development director, why do we care when people have covered housing? Because adding a garage or a carport just adds so much more sense to building a home. And you have to have more property and all this stuff. And he said, well, and I don't know, this is what he said, but I haven't double checked or verified. He said, well, in the 1970s, it was, they wanted to bring up the cost of homes. They felt like Provo didn't have expensive enough homes, and somehow that would, I don't know, make it better to have more expensive homes in Provo. And so they put in several places in code, they put in code that would actually make building housing more expensive. I'm like, well, we have the opposite problem now, so can we go through the code and please get rid of all of that stuff? But it's just things like that, right? Like, even at local government levels, there are things that we can do to really help. So please be politically active. Please support candidates that after you've talked to them, you feel like they are a good fit for you. And I once again, thank you for doing this work. And here's a quote that I heard at a recent conference, and it's from the Talmud, and I just thought it was beautiful, and I don't know, so I'm going to read it. It says, "Do not be daunted by the enormity of the world's grief. Do justly now. Love mercy now. Walk humbly now. You are not obligated to complete the work, but neither are you free to abandon it." So thank you for not abandoning your work.